Hi, I'm Christian Schiller, and in this video, I'm going to look at Runme, a way of bringing interactivity to your documentation. Now, wait, some of you might say, Chris, you've covered this before. Indeed, I have, in a live stream format, and I liked what I saw, but I hit some problems, and I was contacted by the developers of Runme themselves, who told me that some of those issues they were fixing in a new version and I should take another look. So here is that second look. Let's get started. So this is the Runme website, sort of lots of information to take a look through and browse through. It's slightly confusing because they now have this cloud version, which I don't think existed last time I looked. A little limited right now. But that's not necessarily what you want to begin with, although that's kind of the most obvious place to start. What you actually want lurks between this big Make Runbooks interactive heading and this animation, and it's this homebrew command here. So open up the terminal, paste that command in, and when it's done, Runme is installed. And with that done, I will now jump into my typical split view so I can mess around and also read through the docs at the same time and figure out which aspects we want to try first. I think first I will also install the VSCode extension. That will probably be my main point of interaction anyway. And here you can see a good summary of all the things that the extension can do. So I'll hit install. Not much is immediately obvious, so we need to find a project with a README file for further experimentation. This first set of documentation just explains what's going on, the different components, and there seem to be three main components in Runme. And yes, the Jupyter Notebooks is, I suppose, a good comparison, not completely. So we have the CLI tool, the kernel, and then the runners. So this is in VS Code and on the web. I'll try and get through as many of those as possible. But first, let's jump into a getting started guide. Where should we begin? Probably the CLI makes the most sense first. Runme by default will interact with any file called README. You can override that, but that's its default behavior. And you just run the runme command, so we get a little bit confusing, in the current directory where it will look for that file. So you can see there's a classic readme.md there. Type in runme, and it will process the various commands available in the document and offer to let me run them within this TUI, this terminal user interface. This can, of course, take a little bit of time depending what the command is and what it's doing, and if it's Node, how many dependencies it needs to install. But this is basically the command that I triggered here, and we get the output in the terminal as we would expect. Let's try one that's a little bit more interesting than installing dependencies, although it's a very essential one, of course. So let's try yarn build, just so it's contained within the terminal for now. So just click down on the down arrow on your keyboard, hit enter, and it runs the underlying commands. Fortunately, Docusaurus has this nice visual interface as well. And again, after some time, it runs the command as you would expect. Except in this case, I have an error, but it's not really Runme's fault. And of course, it shows that we are, after all, running the actual commands. So far, so good. You get the idea there. The VS Code integration is more visual. So I'll find the same example project. Here it is. Open up the README file. And you can see that instead of the normal markdown renderer, we now have all these extra features here provided by Runme. And you can see you can add blocks in line as well. These blocks are indicated in the view you see right now. You'll see code blocks and markdown blocks. And the code blocks are the ones that are most interesting, but it also provides this sort of interesting markdown editor as well. and we can run it in the inbuilt CLI. Although I did discover some inconsistencies with how it detects the languages, depending on the source README, of course. But using the VS Code integration is where it becomes more visual, kind of more useful, because you can interact with code snippets as you write or as you navigate the code of a project. You can see here that you get this sort of new interface to a markdown file. It does all sorts of different things, but primarily what we're interested in is running this code block. You can just run it in line in the document like that. It's kind of odd that you you sort of have it running inside your markdown, but that's precisely the point. And you can stop it again from there. And likewise with the build, it's kind of tidier in some ways than normally when VS Code will open up the extra terminal window. And you can close it again. It treats everything as blocks, so you can see you have code blocks and markdown blocks. And it detects the language of each block. But if you notice, this one up the top has been detected as text. So this execution won't work. And if we open it in CLI, we'll see what the actual error is. So how do we change that? There we go. We can click that and change it to match what it should be. But bizarrely, SH or shell isn't an option there. So I'm not 100% sure what you're supposed to use or what's providing this. Is it Runme or is it VS Code? So who is at fault here? I suppose is what I'm saying. Because none of these are relevant, strangely. And it's strange because, of course, in the CLI version, it detected and ran it fine. So I wonder how I can fix that. The only way I found to fix this was to, instead of using the Runme provided markdown, I opened up the markdown version, which you can get from clicking the icon there. And you can see the offending block here. And you can also see that you could still run things using Runme, but in a more traditional markdown interface. So I'll just delete that, which I accidentally added. And we can see that this, for some reason, is text. So if I change that there, and now we can see that it's correct, but not correct. So now we're having issues with the command being recognized. So that's also confusing. So none of them are working. Another way to use Runme is without VS Code, but in kind of a headless version of VS Code. And we can do this with the runme open command, but it needs a few dependencies first. We'll just trigger that by running the command. This will install code server, which is the headless VS Code, again from Homebrew, which is helpful. And now the process continues, which is installing extensions to code server. And we basically get the same sort of interface that we are used to in VS Code, but in the browser instead. You've probably seen this in a couple of projects and products, actually. But we get the example project is already loaded in, and the extension has been enabled. So I just have to open up the README, and that's what we've just been seeing. This is all, of course, quite useful for sharing with other people, et cetera, et cetera. And this works here, strangely. Quite what the problem was a minute ago, I'm not sure. And now we can even trigger the site running from within here. I mean, it's all local, I suppose. And the build process, quite where that is building to, I'm not sure, but who knows? The mysteries of all this sort of headless stuff. And I assume this also means you can run Runme in things like Codium and various other fully open source versions of VS Code as well. Also having a quick look around the interface, you can also see that there's this pane provided by the Runme extension that shows you other README files it's detected in the current project that have runnable items of code in, including not just README.mds in this case, actually, which is interesting. Another option is to use Runme's cloud offering. This is how they, I guess, plan to make money in the long run. And this lets you share various runbooks and outputs and things like that. So firstly, we need to create an account via GitHub. And from there, we then connect our VS Code instance to our cloud credentials. So this is the same extension that we already have. With that authenticated, basically, when you run a command, you can save it, and you can see now it's been saved to the cloud. And when we open up the cloud version, it will show us the output of that. So I guess this is useful for debugging command outputs with people, with other team members, and providing them with a link to see those details. And there are some other integration options available too that seem interesting. If you want to take the time to set them up, there's embedding GitHub Actions inside the VS Code output, which is something I kind of wanted to experiment with, but I wasn't completely sure how to set this up properly because it needed a lot more setup on my workflows that I wasn't completely sure if I wanted to dig into at this particular moment in time. But you can basically, you just need to have that manual trigger option in your action. Like a couple of other tools in this space, there's also these deep linking options for sharing a repository with someone, and then they can just open it immediately in Runme. I assume that means they have to have Runme. I don't know if it prompts them to install it if they don't. I'm not completely sure. But as I do, I will take that link and paste it in, and it does indeed open it up in VS Code. And yeah, with it in the extension, run it, and it clones a project. I'm not completely sure what project I've opened here, but you get the idea. Yeah, there we go. It's obviously not my project, so I have no idea what's going on here, but this command should run. It may take a little bit of time, actually, this one. I might have picked a bad example. And there we go. Things are happening. Again, I don't exactly know where this is processing, but yes, it definitely works as an onboarding tool. And there's also a browser extension here that does something similar as well. And you can do the same thing into README in another project. And that was Runme, or to be precise, my second look at Runme. If you have a use case for bringing interactive code to your documentation in this whole world ecosystem of tooling that I am calling dynamic docs, take a look. If you have any comments about your own usage of it, please let me know in the comments below, where you can also share or subscribe, of course. If you want to find more about me, you can look at chrischinchilla.com, or again, of course, subscribe. Thank you very much for joining me, and take care, everybody.